2 Samuel chapter number 12. 2 Samuel chapter number 12. As I was wrestling with and trying to figure out what God wanted me to share, what God is saying to us in this hour, in this moment. I know we were in a series entitled I Can't Breathe, but then God began to speak to us concerning the minds of people and how we handle disappointments and setbacks, frustrations in our lives. And so I'm going to introduce a passage. I can't read it all for the sake of time, but I'm going to introduce a passage. 2 Samuel chapter number 12, beginning with verse number 15. It says this: Then Nathan the prophet went to his house, meaning David's house, and the Lord afflicted the child that Uriah's wife bore to David, and he became sick. David therefore sought God and on the behalf of the child. And David fasted and went in and laid all night on the ground. And the elders of the house stood beside him and to raise him from the ground, but he would not, nor did he eat any food with them. And on the seventh day, the child died. Verse 19, verse 18 again, the child died, and for they said, behold, while the child was alive, he spoke with them. We spoke to him, and he did not listen to us. How then are we to say to him that the child is dead? He may do something to himself. But when David saw that the servants were talking and conversing, he automatically assumed that the child was dead. And when they recognized, or when they answered him and said he's dead, he got up, took a bath, went and ate, and they were perplexed because they didn't understand. How is it you did all that fasting and praying to save the child's life? When the child dies, you get up and you eat. I want to talk on the subject, when God says no. When God says no. Brothers and sisters, if we be honest, one of the things that we often hear about God, one of the attributes that we were first introduced about God concerning him in Bible study or Sunday school or vacation Bible school, is that one thing we learned was that God is a prayer answering God. That when we call on God, God will always answer our prayers. But the insinuation of that statement is that when we call on God, or the expectation behind that statement is that when we call on God and ask God for a thing, God will always answer us in the affirmative. That God will always say to us that the answer is yes concerning whatever it is that we've asked him for. But question this morning is, if we be honest, many of us know that there are some things that we asked God for and God did not do. There are some things that we asked God for and that God did not perform for us in the way that we wanted him to perform. And the question becomes, what do you do when God does not do what you want him to do? Because many of us, we believe that God is a genie and all we have to do is just rub the side of our Bible and we get our wish, but not understanding that God is not a genie. God is a sovereign God that makes the decisions, and he always knows what we need better than we know ourselves. And we have to understand that in this season that many of us have become angry and mad and upset with God because God did not do for us what we wanted God to do in the timing that we wanted him to do it. And many people have walked away from God and God's church because we did not get our way. Well, can I go ahead and tell you, brothers and sisters, that we are not or we should not come to God like a bunch of spoiled babies, because God understands that God is not always going to do what we want him to do, because God is sovereign, which means that God can do what he wants, when he wants, and for whom he wants. He is sovereign, and we've got to learn as faith-filled people to bow to the will and the sovereignty of God. I know this is a hard word, but if you stick with me, I believe that deliverance is going to take place, because many of us need to know this. We are walking around in depression and in anger and being upset because God did not do for us what we thought we needed him to do in the timing we needed him to do it. But if we be honest, there are times in our lives where we had to look back over our lives and be honest that after we have grown and after we have matured and we looked at some of the stuff we asked God for, sometimes we got to be honest and thank God that he didn't give us what he gave, what we wanted to have. What we prayed for, he didn't make it happen, because there are times when we have prayed out of our flesh and prayed out of our own will and desire. But sometimes we got to learn how to bow to what God allows. Here's this, that David is in this place because the Bible says, you do understand that David, he is king now, and he one day saw a woman by the name of Bathsheba taking a bath. And she was the wife of Uriah, and when he sees her, he brings her into his chambers and sleeps with her, and she gets pregnant. And she begins to get pregnant. She's pregnant with David's baby. She knows it's David's baby because Uriah is away at war. So he had not been home and had not been with his wife. And now she comes to him and tells him, David, I'm pregnant. And David decides that he's going to fix the situation by killing Uriah. But now here it is that she births the child that she had with David while she was still married to Uriah. And the Bible says that the prophet Nathan comes to the king's house and tell the king, you wrong. God knows what you did. He knows that you slept with that man's wife. He knows what you've done, and God says he's going to spare your life, but he's going to kill the baby. But the Bible says, and at that moment, the child was afflicted with a sickness. And here it was that David went in and he went and began to fast. And he went and began to pray. And he began to stay in that place that even while the servants were trying to get him up off the floor, he refused to move from that place because he was begging God to change his mind. And some of us under the sound of my voice have been in that place where we have wanted God to change his mind. But sometimes we've got to recognize that God is sovereign. I'm going to keep saying that, which means that God is in charge and he has the ability to do what he wants. But the thing about it is that we've always got to have faith in the fact that God's sovereignty will always work in our favor. But here it was. David is lamenting before God because the child is sick. Some of us are in places in our lives where we are lamenting, we are struggling because there are things that are going on in our lives that we want God to change. There are things that we're going on in our lives, and watch this, there are sometimes God will do it for us. Many times God will do it for us, but we've got to recognize that God will do it in his timing and when he desires. So we've got to understand even in this moment that when hard times are arising in our lives, that even now we've got to trust the plan and the procedures of God. We've got to understand that even in this moment, we've got to be careful, though, while we're waiting on God to move on our behalf, because that is when the enemy will love to creep in and cause you to become depressed about something. And it's amazing in this hour that so many people are walking around with battling the demon of depression. And here it is that depression, some of us are depressed because we had to stay in the house, but others are depressed for so many other things. The Lord began to show me this week that the reason why many people are wrestling with depression in this hour is because our lives have slowed down to the point that we've had to face the real person in us. We will be able to quiet some of those voices and some of those anxieties and some of those emotions in our head because we were busy working. We were busy going about our day. But now, because we've been locked up in the house, we've had to wrestle with some real stuff. There's some demons we thought were dead in our lives. They were not dead. They were just asleep. And in this hour, they start rising up again. And we start wrestling with stuff. You thought you were over the breakup. You thought you were over what your daddy did. You thought you were over them firing you. You thought you were delivered from the thing that happened to you in high school. You thought you were over the baby dying. You thought you were over the miscarriage. You thought you were over the death of mama. You thought you were over the death of daddy. You thought you were over when your brother died. But the truth of the matter is, while being in the house, you've had to wrestle with all of those struggles again. And it feels today like the issue happened yesterday, because Satan would love nothing more than to drag you into a place of utter depression so that he can snatch the gift and the call on your life. Many of us have to understand that this is an interesting place to be, because Satan would love nothing more than to tear everything we have apart. And he uses the rough seasons and the rough times and the heartbreaking moments to make us feel like God has forgotten us and has abandoned us. And here's this. I like this story, though, because this story is an example. David gives us an example of what we should do when things don't work out in our favor. Because the Bible says all while the child was sick, David was praying and fasting to the point that when the child dies, his servants come and they're trying to figure out who's going to tell the king that his baby is dead. And they're going to say, you go. No, you go. No, you go. You go. I ain't going to tell him, you tell him. I ain't going to tell him, you tell him. Because they are afraid of what he's going to do to himself as a result of the bad news. Can I go ahead and tell this and go ahead and kill that demon that will try to make you harm yourself because of bad news? I curse the demon of suicide. I curse the demon of self-sabotage. Put them pills down. Put that knife down. Put them guns down. I decree and declare, you shall live and not die. You shall live and not die. You ain't gonna go get no rope and hang yourself. You gonna live and you not gonna die. I silence every voice in your head that's trying to tell you that life would be better if you were not alive. I decree and declare you're going to get up and you're going to open up them blinds, let that sunlight in and live. Get up at that house, walk around the neighborhood, do something, but you going to live. I decree and declare that the enemy will not have your life. Whether we know it or not, that we think that depression is only for unsaved folk. We think that depression is only for folks who don't know God. But the truth of the matter is, saved folk get depressed too. Folk who know God and got prayer lives get depressed too. And I decree and declare that even now, I put a blood cord around your life, and I declare that Satan will not have your mind, he will not have your emotions, and you will not harm yourself. Even in this moment, we got to recognize, because see, many times, especially as African American people, we don't know how to deal with our emotions. Either we're going to cry it out or argue it out or fight it out, but we don't know how to begin to talk it out. And not understanding that many of us have been told that you don't need to go to no therapist. You don't need to talk to nobody. If you go to a psychiatrist, you crazy. But baby, Baba, let me tell you this. If you don't go to therapy, you're crazy. Because many of us have dealt with trauma in our lives. We are dealing with post-traumatic stress syndromes and disorders because of the fact that we have dealt with all kinds of loss, all kinds of disappointment, but we've been made to suck it up. We cry alone, but we've never talked about it. But I decree and declare that God is about to heal you of every stronghold, every yoke, every depressed place, every traumatic event. God is pressing reset on your memory and your body. God is about to turn things around. The Bible says that they're trying to figure out who gonna tell David that his baby dead. I mean, if he did all that and the baby was just sick, if he in there wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep, all he doing is praying, and the baby was just sick, what he gonna do if the baby died? Because see, sometimes people think that your prayer life and your travail is a sign of weakness or a sign of irresponsibility, which means that you're doing all that because you can't handle what's going on. No, boo, I ain't praying because I can't handle it. I'm praying because I know if it's going to change, God's the only one that can change it. If it's going to turn, God is the only one that can turn it. But there are some people that look at your stuff and look at your response to your troubles as extreme. But I believe that there are some people under the sound of my voice that knows that God has the ability to turn things in your favor. Watch this. They're trying to figure out what they're going to do because we don't want the king to hurt himself. But I tell you, even in this moment, that sometimes you got to learn how to do what David did. The Bible says that when he recognized they were trying to figure out who going to tell him that the baby was dead, he told them, he dead. Like, yeah, he dead. David gets up, washes himself, and goes and eat. He gets up, washes himself, takes a bath, and go eat. And they trying to figure out, has he lost his mind? Because that's not the response they were looking for concerning what he was dealing with. See, some folks are expecting you to fall out. Some folks are expecting you to lose your mind. Hey, some folks are expecting you to have unfavorable responses. And let me go ahead and tell you, in this season, you need to shock the enemy because the enemy is putting things in your life to destroy you, to make you give up, to make you throw in the towel. But I decree and declare that even in this moment, that God is putting a strength on the inside of you that you didn't even know you had. God is putting a strength on the inside of you to help you to handle every misfortune and every struggle in your life because you recognize it's God that's in control. But I like this here, Mike, because there's one more thing that he did. He gets up. He washes himself, right? He takes a bath. Then, watch this, because there are sometimes that places you've got to learn how to cleanse yourself of the last place. There are times, you ever been in a situation where you know you done had a hard day, you done had a rough day, and the only thing you want, let me just get in the shower. If I can just get in the shower, things will be a little better. If I can just wash the day off me, then I recognize that I can begin to reset some things in my life. And let me go ahead and tell you that God is about to press reset on our lives. That many of us have been walking around with years of anxiety and years of struggle and years of pain and years of worry. But God says it's time to get up and wash up. It's time to get up and wash up. It's time to cleanse yourself of everything that was that place. I decree and declare that your bitter place and your depressed place, it has to come up off you. Your bitter place and your depressed place, come on, help me, has to come up off you because you recognize that even in this moment that God is shifting things and he's turning things. You have to tune in on this day because there's a word that God has for you to shake everything concerning you. You will not die and you will not be sad the rest of your life. But I decree and declare the joy of the Lord. The joy of the Lord. The joy of the Lord is coming upon you now. But listen at it. Here's what I want you to see. He not only got up, he not only washed up, that he not only ate up, but the Bible says he praised up. Text says that he went and he worshiped. His baby's dead, but he goes, changes his clothes, and he goes and worships. And he's trying to figure out why he worshiping. What you got to praise for? What are you shouting about? What reason do you have to bless God? Because David told him, listen, I recognize this one thing, that God is in charge of everything. And if God didn't want him to live, there's nothing I can do. He said, if my praying and some lamenting and my crying and rolling in the floor couldn't heal him, it certainly won't bring him back. And so you got to recognize that some folks will rather see you dig deeper in a hole. But even in this, when you reach the point that there's nothing else you can do about the situation, the best thing for you to do is throw up your hands and begin to worship the name of our God, because even in that moment I recognize that he is still sovereign. Is there anybody under the sound of my voice that recognizes that even in this, not my will but thy will be done? I would that you would have done it by this time for me, but I want you to know that God says in this moment he wants you to see where the real mature saints are, where the real mature folks are, because you thought by now COVID would have been over. You thought by now the marriage would have been saved. You thought by now your body would have been healed. You thought by now your family would be better. You thought by now the bills would have been paid off. But wow, things are not the way you want them to be. Can you still bless God for his sovereignty, that he is still in charge and working things on your behalf. I hear Romans tapping on my ear, and we know that all things work together for the good of them that love God, and are called according to his purpose. I don't know what tomorrow holds, but I do know who holds tomorrow. But I'm made up in my mind. I refuse to let the devil make me depressed about what I'm going through. But I will bless the Lord at all times. At all times. At all times. At all times. I'll give him glory when I got everything. I give him glory when I ain't got nothing. I give him glory when I got a lot of friends. And I'll give him glory when I'm all by myself. I give him glory when I can shop where I want. And I give him glory when I gotta go and get hand-me-downs. I give him glory when I got a refrigerator full of food. And I give him glory when I can see to the back of the refrigerator. I give him glory when my marriage is well. And I give him glory at the divorce table. I give him glory when my children are doing well. And I give him glory when I gotta go to the jail and get them out of prison. I give him glory when mama is well. And I give him glory when I gotta march down the aisle and do mama for the last time. Whatever I'm dealing with, I made up my mind. I will give